Hey everybody! So it's been a couple days since I posted the finale of the New England Farmhouse renovation, and I did get a couple comments back that it wasn't as detailed as people had hoped. And even at the beginning of the video, I did say that we were going to do lots of cuts. But the truth is, since we've been in the farmhouse and trying to really settle in, I don't have my work station all laid out, and it's not really set up for video editing right now. But I did happen to take 1,300 photos of the entire project from start to finish, and while I can't do that nice clean wrap video like I did for the Newton mudroom, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and well, I'm going to show you all 1,300 photos, or an edited down version of that, and you can see the entire scope of the project from start to finish, and then all the steps we went through, basically getting the house demo, how we started doing framing, and then building the staircase, the floors, and the entire process. So this is what it is. Hope you guys enjoy. Great, so here we are with the video montage. All 1,300 photos have basically been taken, and I edited them down. Don't ask me the final number. I did this as quickly as I could, really just trying to get something out there. So we bought the New England farmhouse and barn in December of 2017, and it was really a home for Colored Spots Creative. It's going to be our new offices in Charlton, Mass, and we were really excited about the barn. We were looking at that barn, and that was really what we wanted. But the barn did come attached with a farmhouse, and it was an 1880 farmhouse, same age as the barn. There have been some renovations to it, and well, let's take a little tour of it from the inside. This is the top of the barn, which is by far the most exciting. It's the most open space. Everything in here is all timber and beam. It's beautiful. Put together. I mean, the construction is absolutely immaculate, and this used to be where they actually stored hay for the horses and mules that they keep downstairs. For a while, I guess it was used really part of the sewing museum to show heritage quilts. But we're going to have a lot of fun with that. That's really going to be our workspace up here. That's a staircase to get us to the upstairs, and it shows these two great sliding barn doors, which are still functioning. They do need a little bit of love with the track, but they still work and they still open, so very happy about that. This is bay number 2. This is where the wood shop is going to be, and then on the right hand side there you can see this little step up, and this was where the stalls were for the animals. In fact, there's 2 of them here, and you can actually see the trough and where the hay chute came down. So it's really it's kind of fun working in here. Here's the back area. This was well lit. It had some insulation and drywall put up, and then on this side, this is where the Colored Spots office is going to be. Now in bay number 1, you can actually see there's a staircase that brings us into the house. Now going into the house, this was our first tour of the house. Now we came in, we entered through that hallway, and then this was the doorway that brought us into the kitchen. And then once we were in the kitchen had been done, looked like it had been done in the 1950s, and then this bathroom here was put in. So it was a functioning bathroom, and we decided that we were going to keep it. But turning right from that brought us through this archway and a step down into, I guess, what should be considered the dining room. And then you can see the shot of that. There was a closet there, a lovely little chandelier, these great picture windows. There's a great shot of the step up. There's a shot of that staircase with that door that leads down to the basement. And then on the other side of the staircase, through another archway, was the living room. And that's a 12 by 20 room, so it was a good size, lots of light, lots of windows. And then there's a shot of the front door. Now the staircase, well, staircase was very narrow, very steep getting up, and then this was the opening bringing us to the second floor. So it really wasn't practically useful at all. You can see the pitch of the roof being cut in right there. And then, like, second thought, they really decided, hey, we're going to put in a railing just in case someone's going to fall into this big hole we cut in the floor. Then on to the kids' room, which was through this door, and then that's where you see the stairs actually went in partway to the doorway. And then you can call to the kids' room. There were lots of little stick-ons there on the roof. Here's the closet in the kids' room, and this leans over, had its own window, and then there's the door again. So there's the way in, the way out. Then we skipped across there, and we're going into what we call the master bedroom. So when we're in the master bedroom, largest room in the house, at least in floor space, but it did have not completely usable space because of the pitch of the roof. And anything below 4 feet you really can't consider usable space, even though it was really nice. So only 2 windows in this room, and then on this side, which is the back side of the house, that's where we had the 2 closet doors, which led through what I was coining the walk-through closet. There's a bathroom on the 2nd floor. This is the only shot I have of it from the tour, and then that was done probably at the same time the kitchen was. It was a step up. Oh, plus we have a basement. Liz has said she won't go in the basement. It's very short roofs, very musty, and a lot of creepy crawlies, particularly because we have that loose stone foundation on 2 sides. And then that's it. That's the New England farmhouse and barn that we bought. And we moved in right away, and I started unloading trailer Swift and then just really setting up my wood shop. Because I knew I was going to need all these tools and I had projects going on. So I jumped right in. You know, we were getting really into the cold part of the winter. It hadn't started to snow yet, but I wanted to get everything in there because we knew we were going to have to do demo on the house just from the quick walkthrough, just to see what was behind the walls. And we knew that one of the walls, at least on the oldest side in the living room, had to be insulated. So I got my shop set up, and then, that was the end of pretty much load-in. Did a couple of projects. We had Christmas and the holidays, and then we came in and we started in earnest on demo. We got our dumpster. My father-in-law, Lou, very generous guy, just retired. He came and helped me. And one of the first things we had to do was we pulled out the picture window because we had so much demo. We just wanted to do a shoot into the dumpster, and then that made things a lot easier. And then once we had all that set up, then it was just really about tearing things down. And we knew we were going to start in the dining room. And so we started in the dining room, started pulling off the plaster, and this was all newer plaster. It wasn't as old as the living room side, but we figured this was done maybe in the 1940, 1945. The bay windows were in pretty good shape, so we knew we were going to pull them down. Now, once we got onto the living room side, well, we took a pause because that was all horsehair plaster and lathing. And here's just a quick shot of inside the walls where they would frame with the whole tree. You can see the live side. Oh, what's this? Oh, okay.
Guys, I just wanted to show a little bit of our process when we're actually doing the renovation on the farm.
Oh my God, this is my
go in, we get measurements.
This is my vlog voice. So this is a tour when we first rendered it. So I'm going to let you all watch this because it just shows really where we're at.
Extra spaces and not really knowing what to do with it. So this is a really quick rendering of it. I say quick, but the measurements are pretty accurate. And in particular, this is what I'm going to need in order to make the most of it. So let's just do a really quick tour here. Right now we've got the whole house. The roof is off. We see the ground, but we're going to actually take the ground out for now. So we're going to lose our ground floor and just turn that off so that we can see the entire house. Now, starting from the basement up, let's make a quick little foundation, and then we're going to look at every single layer as we go. So we're just going to gray the others for now. So when we're starting at the foundation, you see actually that the rest of the house is grayed out. But I put in the foundation, and we've got loose stones on 2 sides, and then we have brick on the other 2 sides. Now, where we're looking at right here and this door, if I was to actually make the ground visible again, and I go over here and we're going to take a look at it so that it is visible. That's where that little door is, and then this is the driveway here. Let me just put a mouse click here. So this is the driveway. This is actually a stone wall, and here this is the entrance to the barn. So the barn's not actually drawn in this picture. This is just to give us an idea of what the house looks like as we're doing our renovation on it. Now, this window right here is the window that we popped out yesterday. So I'm going to take and give us a tour of the first floor at this point. So we're going to go to the first floor. We're going to make that an active layer, and then I'm just going to gray everything else out for now. So when we're looking at the first floor, this is our first floor. And so you can see as we enter into the house here, over here, we'll do a little zoom in. This is our archway, so this is the kitchen here. This is where the staircase is. This is the front door. That's the window right there where we punched it out. And then this was the room in here that we did the first demo for. Let me add a little bit more detail to this so that we can show others. And then what I'm going to do instead of that is we're just going to turn off the floors, and then we'll go floor by floor. So let's take a look at our very first floor. Now here we got it with a little bit of detail to it. So in here in this closet section, that's where we found the chimney. Now that chimney goes down into the basement, but it actually doesn't go into the second floor. So this has been a vacated chimney and it's not actually in use. So we have to consider knocking that down. And then we get a bigger closet, plus we get some bricks that we can use. So here's the staircase, and this is really where the 3D rendering is going to come in useful to me. Now this is what the CAD program I use, which is called Vectorworks, puts in here for a standard staircase. And so the dimensions are not quite accurate to what we have in the house now. As we go up in the house, we've got that very subtle winder and the very sort of steep inside and then wider on the outside. And that's just not something that I drew in here. Well, I didn't want to take too much detail because I figured at that point I'm going to redo it anyway. So there's the archway, and then this is the room that's all cleared off. We're not going to do anything with the kitchen or the bathroom on this side. This has been updated, so it's pretty recent. And then the next room we're going to work in over here. This is what we're calling the living room. Then this is where all the horsehair plaster was. So let's move up to the second floor now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put on my second floor layers here. I'm going to leave off the ceiling so we can actually see in. Here's where doing the 3D rendering is really important. And I'm going to zoom out. Because we have different peaks to this house, we have the original house, which was this peak right here. We know that in this section here is where the window was left out. And then we're thinking that this door was probably a window too. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4 windows, and then 2 windows on tops. And then the entrance to this house would have actually been on the side. And then this section here is what was added probably around the 1940s, 1945. This section was added and the 2 peaks were brought together. So we can see that that chimney that we found in the closet down here doesn't actually come up into this room. And then the one active chimney we do have, which is with the furnace, is right here. So then as we come up, and the hole's not cut into the floor yet, we do have, it's not really an issue, but it's just something to consider. We have the 2 peaks to the roof and where they combine. And so in this section here, we've got one pitch, and then we have a straight wall, and then we have a second pitch that comes in. Now, I don't really know if I have access to this space that's here, but I do know that there's a space now. And then that's where these drawings really kind of come in handy, is I have a wall that's pitched here, and it goes all the way to this door. And so there is a vellum space here. Plus, I know that if I do put on the ceiling, all of a sudden we see the ceiling, I know where I have attic space. And so let's just do a little zoom out and readjust my focus. So I know I have attic space here above this peak. And then if we also rotate this way, and then we're just going to shift down, I know I have an attic space here. So there's no access to the attic as it is right now, but it would be great to be able to put in some type of trap or ladder here in order to access this space and then see what it looks like up there. I'm going to turn off that ceiling so that we can go back to seeing the floor, because one of the interesting things we found is this little closet space here. Now this section here is the bathroom, so this was done rather recently, but then because of the chimney, I've got this very long closet, and there is an access door in here which is not drawn in, but there's a closet door in the bathroom here that accesses this space, but it's a small door. And then I have this very long space here that is not really active. So just from looking at this drawing, I'm thinking what we're going to do is we're actually going to close this off, keep a closet in the bathroom, and then move this wall in so that this is part of this room here, and it'll make it feel a little bit bigger. Otherwise, this space can't be used because it's so narrow and long. It doesn't really make sense to have it. Another interesting little component is this closet in here, and this is in the we're going to call this the master bedroom up here. So this little space here, which has got the pitch of the 2 separate roofs, has two doors, one on this side, one on this side. Hasn't been drawn in. This is a very quick rendering on this point. And then this is a closet, and it's just a very long closet. So we've definitely got some things that we can think about and how we're going to put them together. And really what I wanted to do with this walkthrough was just show you that when we do go into a house, there is a good degree of planning that goes into it. And so while demo looks like it runs really quick and dirty, there's a plan, and you always have to have a plan when working on houses of this age. It just really helps keep your overall vision of it, and that's what I wanted to show you. One of the other things we do here at Colored Spots is we create scale models of the places that we work on. And that's really important when you are dealing with something of this age that doesn't really fit into a standard house style. Next thing I'm going to do is, of course, we'll draw the barn in. And then I'll have a complete impression of what this house looks like. And then I'll probably end up adding in the roof, just so anywhere down the road, if I do need a quick reference to something, I'll have it. All right. Thanks for watching and checking it out. And I hope you do like and subscribe to us at Colored Spots Creative, and just catch how the restoration of this house is going to go. All right. Thanks for tuning in.
So that was really early on in the project, and sitting here now, it's kind of funny to listen to myself go through that tour. I did go on to make detailed plans of it, and here you can see the first floor with the entrance to the barn, the kitchen, the pantry, the closet there, and the dining room, and then that old staircase as it wraps up. And so that's the before, and then here was the after, what we wanted to do with it. So we wanted to blow out the pantry, open up that hallway to the barn into the dining room, and then just really cut in that staircase so that we could get a full staircase in there. On the second floor, here's our before, where you can see where the staircase was, that little dashed line, that's that unusable eave space. And then you can see the closet in the bathroom. And then after that, what we're planning on doing was removing the closet from the kids' room, but taking that closet space back from the bathroom, and then vaulting the ceiling between the two pitches of the house. So those are some quick before and afters. And now that we had a plan, well, we set out demo in earnest. We didn't want to break down more than we had to, because that would just add to extra work. And well, Lou was back again, and really a big help with getting this all done. Here we are in the foyer section where we've taken out that wall, we've exposed the window and that little floorboard. Here's the pictures of the roof with that vellum space behind it, and then looking in there, we saw we had a pretty good space. So there's the old cedar shake shingles, and there's the chimney. Now the chimney has a little dog leg to it. It was off-center to the house as it went up, but aesthetically they wanted it to come out and be in the center of the roof, so that's why we see that dog leg to it. And that's where we started to see the little cut in to the different pitches. Here's the floorboards we started pulling up, and we got to the point where we had pulled up the floorboards and exposed the ceiling underneath, so we could really kind of see the floor joists. Now, the ceiling, we didn't know if we were going to save it yet or demo it, so not knowing that, I took the time to cut down with a masonry bit in my skill saw, just to give us a nice hard line of the part of the ceiling we were going to take down, so that we could spare the other part of the ceiling. And then that coming down was really dusty. But we got it down. The floor joist was still there, it was still supporting, and then it was just a matter of really taking a look at that. There's some of that old knob and tube wire that was running all throughout the house, and there was lots of other wires that were inside the walls that we moved out of the way. Now here's a great shot looking up at the ceiling where you can see the pitches of the roof coming together. Oh, and then a slow motion of that front section of the roof by the door just coming down. So dusty. I mean, we wore particle masks and hat. I mean, it was getting pretty cold at this point, but we made sure that we were bundled up. And that was Lou just pushing that down, and then we moved it all away. Now it was time to really kind of get into the attic for the first time. So now that we had the attic roof up, I was able to climb up there on the original cedar shake shingles that were in there, and it was a pretty good space in the attic. In fact, someone had put some floorboards down there. It wasn't vented. There was an attempt at insulation. So aside from being a little dry and musty, it wasn't that bad. I had taken some measurements on it because I knew I wanted to combine the two roofs together, and so after some math and some calculations and consulting with some friends, we figured out a way where we could get that all sort of joined together and just folded into where we have this very large foyer. But we did take the time to really kind of consult, structural experts on that. And here we are looking at the stairs. Again, I marveled at the way they used to build back then. It was just, everything was true boards. These are 2x4s, and they are actual 2x4s. And a lot of them are turned on their sides. They still have the living bark from the trees. And here we are looking at the walls inside the living room. Now that was all horsehair plaster and lathing. We totaled all the lathing off. And you can see the post and beam supports, and then the 2x4 just studs that went in after the main supports went in. But no insulation. Cold, 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 and we're getting in the middle of the winter. In fact, right about this point, we did have some issues with the pipes freezing. And so we managed to resolve that and then continue on. There you see the chimney, you see the bathroom wall on the right, and then the stairs are there on the left. Here's the chimney that was vacated, and that's that closet inside the living room that we're planning on breaking down. And we got all the ordering in. Home Depot came and dropped off 2 pallets worth of drywall. We got a new dumpster. I mean, we were really tearing through as much stuff as we possibly could. But with everything down, we started doing our back framing. And one of the things we wanted to do was really kind of open up that kitchen. And so we put in a header board there and some supports, and we opened up which would later become the nook for the refrigerator. We supported that original wall with some new studs, and we made sure that it was straight, and in particular 16 inches on center. Here you see the original wall, and then we cut that out because on this side now we're moving the door from the dining room into the living room, and then that's really going to allow us to create that serpentine stair, which we were still in the process of designing. This is the back side. It's the wet wall to the bathroom, and I had to pull that out to properly support the shower. Again, this is just a couple more shots of the studding. Now, every time we went in, we would always put our supports in before we remove the old, and that's kind of important when you're looking at, well, just any type of structure. And if you're not familiar with that, always consult an expert whenever you're doing anything that has the potential to be load-bearing. Started to tear down that staircase, which was fun. It was great getting that out of there. It really opened up the space, and once we opened up the space, we got a lot better feel for how we were going to fit a new staircase in. So it was at the point where we at now, we started really kind of clean things up and start to see where we were going with the entire project. And we were constantly going back and looking at our drawings, at our measurements, and seeing how things were going to fit in there. That's just the old chimney, everything all kind of cleaned up. Here's looking up at the roof. Those 2x6 supports are starting to go through to a new header, and everything's getting connected and supported. We're supporting the original 2x4s that were acting as the roofing trusses with 2x6s. Here we are just opening up that closet and then getting rid of that portion of the vault, and that's where the hall closet's going to go. So in order to get that closet, we had to remove that. Now that did 2 things. When we back framed it, it gave us our closet space, a very good sized closet, but inside the bathroom it allowed us to have a full-size door. We replaced the wall to Aiden's room and made that supporting. It was not actually supporting the floor joists above, it was just a balloon wall, and so now as soon as we started supporting it, it really started to add a rigidity and, well, promise to the whole concept of vaulting this. There we've cut back our peak. We've got our new studding in. This was mostly just to level the wall out so that we would have just very straight studding in order to put the drywall on. And that took time. And speaking of time, once we got into the living room and we started to look at that, we found that one wall, which was the worst out of all of them, really had bowed out on the bottom, and it bowed out almost close to 4 inches. So we had to straighten that wall out before we were going to put our insulation in and our drywall, and that's what we were doing with the strings there. We were finding our level spot, and then we were putting all our studs in. it was really misleading to see from a perspective of not having a square corner or a level spot in the entire house. And so by moving everything out, we then had to start framing back on the windows and building everything out. So it made the wall a lot thicker. And that thickness allowed us to go from an R13 insulation to an R19 insulation, which that's great anytime you can up your R value in a wall. When it came time to insulation, well, we bundled up well, made sure that we had all the proper clothing on, and well, we went to town just putting all that insulation back. And once we got the insulation back in there, it warmed up the whole house. Again, we're in the dead of winter. We had had a little freezing with the heat pipes, but this started to really kind of make the house feel a lot more comfortable. This is just a quick shot of me putting in a new sill and sort of extending the existing sill on the windows. They're not the greatest windows, but we're going to keep them for a while until we do the outside siding of the house, and then we'll put in new construction windows then. And look at all the aspects of a house. In particular, I knew that who doesn't want a TV, just a living room. So I said, well, okay, let's just put an add-on to the existing outlet. Let's put some studding in the wall, just in case you want to hang a flat screen TV, and do it the two heights, the two preferred heights. So I took a picture of it, took some measurements, and I know that they're in the wall. The other thing was when the wall moved out, well, we had to cut out and we had to move all the heating radiators forward. And then once all that was done, all our prep work, we got into the drywalling. And we started on the inside wall. We did all our lower level first. That brought us up to 4 feet, which is your traditional height of all outlets. And then we put the top layer on after that. And so that went up pretty quick and really kind of gave us a sense of accomplishment since we had been really had open walls up to this point. And yeah, it was great. This was, talk about milestones reached. All the drywall up in the living room was certainly a milestone at this point. And then once that happened, well, we had to get on to plastering and everything else. Here's just a quick shot of that doorway we that's going to be the new doorway into the basement. Now we're on the dining room side, but the dining room side, that hadn't gotten started yet with drywall. In the meantime, started putting on our plaster coats, and we started working our way up. And I knew it was going to be a long and arduous process. Plaster coating this, but just did a little bit at a time. On to the dining room side. So we had taken a look at the insulation. We realized that we wanted to put in new insulation, and so we ripped out all the old insulation while we had the walls open, and we decided we were going to put new insulation in. And this just shows the open walls. It shows the header above the picture window, which needed a little bit of reinforcement. And then just again the type of frame they would use with the 4x4 support beams, and then framing studs in between. And 16 inches on center, it's not really something that they thought about back then, so we were really kind of working towards getting it up to code, at least to fitting in new insulation. Just a couple of plaster shots. At this point, every day at the end of the project, I'd always go and throw a layer of plaster on. I do my sanding, I do a plaster layer, and then I let it dry overnight. It was a huge project in terms of just getting all the walls done, so tackling a little bit at a time helped. And we got lots of storms. In fact, this storm in particular really dumped a lot of snow, and it showed us, that we had an ice dam. And that ice dam eventually showed that it was flowing back into the house. We had to open up and pull out the insulation in the living room because we realized it was dripping down, and then go back to finding out where it was coming into the house. And we were able to track that up the wall and into the master bedroom. So once we knew it was in the master bedroom, we opened up the wall, we pulled off the installation, and we took a look. And the soffit between the dormer roof and the regular roof, it just wasn't watertight. That ice dam was pushing back, and we had water just flowing into the house because it was warmer inside than out. Buckets of water. And then once it started melting, it was dripping down through the ceiling. It was dripping on the window. We had to get other buckets in there. So that was a little disappointing, but we got we had other projects to do. I started laying out the floor while that was drying out. Took a look at the pantry that we were going to break down in the hallway into the living room. And of course, while all that was happening, threw up some more layers of plaster. Just one plaster a day, one sanding a day. A couple hours every day, just getting those walls all prepped out and smoothed out and up to the level 5 where I knew we were going to end up painting them and making them look good. In order to get into the new hallway, one big obstacle in the way was that vacated chimney. So we had to set about taking down the chimney, and Lou here is using a little pneumatic chisel in order to do that, going for the grout lines and then just smashing the clay center pipe for it. And then we brought that down to the floor, which really gave us our first look at the floor. And in the living room, we knew we had original floor, and then in the dining room, we realized that, well, the floor was about 3 inches off from one side of the house to the other. We did the marble test, and it just rolled down. So we said we can't live with this. We're going to rip up the floor. So we tore up the original barn board floors. We tore up the underlayment, and this was a really dusty and dirty process. Now, the way that they used to put in these floors was they didn't use, if they didn't have to, they didn't use any type of fasteners. So these were just notched and resting. Gravity was holding them in, and as we started to pull them up, we realized that they were really kind of loose and wobbly. The whole trick to leveling a floor is to really find your highest section and then run your strings and define a level spot from there. And that took a little bit of time, but we were able to find a level, get it up. That's where we knew we were about 3 inches off. And then after cleaning everything up, because we had lighting, we had wires we didn't really want to mess with, we started to level it out, and we took 2x10s and 2x8 boards, and we started nailing them to the existing truss at the level of the string, and that's kind of how we set about leveling it up. And we had to really pay close attention to where our water lines were and where our electrical lines were. So our studs that we were putting in, they really, well, they were on one side or the other, and well, it was a very focused process. Here's just a shot of the level floor. Here's a shot of all of the floor boards in before we put the subfloor in. In particular, there's the chimney that we broke down, and then we just had to reinforce in that area because there was no original floor. Here you can see where it goes into the kitchen, and then by leveling up, we actually got the level of the floor closer to, well, the level of the floor in the kitchen, which in the end, I was really hoping that it would come out to the same level, because that would be nice to have the entire house on one level, but, well, we'll see that a little bit later, how close we got. Then the subfloor went in, and this was 3/4 inch plywood. It's tongue and groove. We glued it down on every joist, and that glue really just kind of helped pull everything together. There was quite a wiggle to this old floor since they hadn't used fasteners. And then once that floor was in, that really got us started. We were ready to start our drywall, and the drywall went up quick. We put our full pieces in, and when you're dealing with drywall, always get the biggest pieces in you can, and then we cut out around the windows so that we wouldn't have a lot of cobbled together pieces. That makes the plastering and the seaming a lot easier later on. There's Lou again, such a big help. Can't give enough shout outs to that man. He was great. While we were there, we knew we had one wall. This was in the barn now that was insulated with hay, and this wall was inside what would amount to the stalls for the horses. And while we were insulating, while we had our drywall, we decided to pull that off and remove all the hay. And then once all the hay was out, we knew we were going to insulate it, and we were going to put drywall back up there. And so that's exactly what we did. So that was a little bit of a side project, but I just want to kind of show you that we were kind of constantly worrying about what was going on in the barn and worrying about what was going on in the house. And then once all the drywall is done, started that long process of plastering again. And this was quite the project. If you've never plastered before, it is a skill, and it is a contest of patience between you and the walls and the dust and the plaster. If you not don't have any of that, don't undertake it. Oh, here we go. We decided that we were not going to tear down the roof, not going to add to the dust, but we did want to replace it because of the water damage, because of the inconsistencies in it. So we got some half-inch drywall, and we put it up right over the existing roof. And there you can see just the chalk lines from where the studs were in the roof, so that we knew where to hit them. And now, once we had a level floor, which was important, I got started on the stairs. So I built that back stair wall, and that was going to give us our nook for the refrigerator, and also support the floor joists that are above, so we could start getting this all prepped out and ready for the staircase to go in. So here you just see it supporting those upper floor joists, and that allowed us to cut it out and really kind of open the space up. We got some Baker's Rack scaffolding in there, and did our back framing up on the second floor, because we were on a drywall kick, so let's try to get all of our drywall in. And back framing, you can't underestimate that. You go through a lot of lumber when you back frame. Here was just, wanted to have access. Didn't have access to the attic before, so I wanted to put in a ladder and give us access to the attic. And that was just quick and easy. Oh, here we are, broken into the hallway and starting to do our framing. We had a nice big header up there, and then we're just taking a look at what it looked like. There was that faux wainscoting on the walls. We pulled that off, and the walls were pretty much a mess. There's that opening into the kitchen, and I knew that had to be framed up. So again, they glued on that faux wainscoting, and that was going to be a mess in terms of just smoothing out the walls and getting them ready for paint. Here the framing's going in. We're doing more drywalling. We've got that all sealed up on both sides. And then instead of just doing the mud and tape, here's the foam seaming on both sides, and then the plastering ahead of time. I know some folks have asked for a tutorial on that, and I will certainly get to it. So thank you for your patience again. And then the framing and getting all of the drywall in, and then matching it up to the existing drywall, which wasn't a standard size. Here you just see the mess that the floor was because of all that glue. Not the floor, the walls were because of the glue on the wainscoting. So in order to get rid of all that, filled it with plaster, sanded down. Once I sanded it down, filled it with more plaster, sanded it down, and then you rinse and repeat that about 4 times, and it becomes smooth, and smooth enough that it really looks seamless from one portion of the wall to the other. And then while this was all going on, I started to notice there was a leak in the chimney. And we knew we had some issues with the roof, but since we had new drywall up, did our best to sort of just mediate the leaking, and so in this case, put on some leak seal from Rust-Oleum, and that did help a little bit. It's the middle of winter. We knew we were going to address that as spring came. Aiden came to join us at the New England Farmhouse, and he wanted to design to take over the kids' room. So we started calling it Aiden's room. He did all his measurements. He went in there. He did his priming, his painting on it. And in the midst of all of this happening, it was it was pretty good winter here in New England. Well, we got another snowstorm. Got another ice dam up on the roof. But this time around, we had managed to really kind of seal up on the inside of that soffit, and we didn't get any water inside. So even though there was an ice dam, we didn't get the water inside, and that was a huge help. Right about this time, Aiden leaving us little messages. Right about this time, spring was starting to get in, the flowers starting to come out, and we were really getting antsy to get in the house, and so our deadlines were coming. And we had other projects going on, so I knew that aside from all the little punch list items we had to do, like put in a fan in the bathroom, and then get a vent in the bathroom. And this was a little combo vent fan because there wasn't one off of the bathroom, and that was important, particularly with the shower. That we had to really kind of just get this project out of the way, get moved in so that we could get colored spots up and running, and just get more of the bigger projects. There's a shot of Liz. We don't see her very often. She's in the refrigerator nook. Hi, Liz. All these unexpected things that happened. Had to take out the wall that was on that. We weren't expecting that. But once we got all that, well, we picked our colors and we started painting. Here's another milestone. As milestones go in projects, when you can get to painting, it's huge. It's really at a point where you start to get rid of the dust. So we're really excited to get there. We used a Wagner sprayer for the first time to do all our priming, and that made really short work of the 2 huge rooms downstairs. There's Liz again. She came in. She's doing all the edging for the final coat. More projects. Had a leaky pipe downstairs in the basement. Had to fix that in the whole meantime. Aiden leaving us more messages. So he was always involved in this project, wanted to know where we were. Here we are inside the dining room, finishing getting that square arch to the same level as the one going into the kitchen. A little aesthetic, but wanted to make sure that as your eye went, you saw the same height all the way around. And we continued that into the living room also. Just a shot inside the hallway showing those corners, all the metal edging we did. And then here's Liz going to town painting. This is after priming. She's doing the sand coat on the ceiling. I took over, started to do all of the painting inside the foyer because it was so high. Had to be up on that scaffolding. And I got most of that done. And then, here's a quick video just kind of looking at it. Well, in this video, you can see the soffit that we had to cover over there. You know, there's the window, none of the trim is in there. All the holes have been cut for the pendants that are going to come later. The little hatch that's going to take us up to the attic. And then, yeah, just this is final paint on that. And then the great line between the ceiling in the dining room and the living room. There's just some work lights there going up. Oh, geez, right after painting, just when we thought the dust was done, we got into finishing the floor in the kitchen. Now, this was a newer floor. Came in with the renovation probably in the 1950s, but boy, was it beat up. Looked like a southern yellow pine. Couldn't really tell. Had a very thick varnish on it. A lot of amber in the stain, and so that took quite a bit just to sand that and get that to the point where, where it would take stain again. But time paid off, and we knew we weren't going to tear it up, and this was the cheaper way to go. Got it all prepped and ready, and here's where Liz started to figure out what the floor of the whole farmhouse was going to look like. So she done some practicing with Old Master stains. She had the pickling white, which went on first, and then the Spanish oak that got brushed on. Here's her just working on that treatment. The pickling white is really great. It pulls out all of that yellow color and just gives you a nice clean palette. It also acts like a clear white, where it allows you to streak and just draw the stain across it after what Liz was going through. Now, like I said, this was more of a southern yellow pine. Really had a lot of amber in the old stain that we couldn't really pull out, so that came through in this. And as a test bed, really worked out well. I know Liz, this went a long way to really kind of helping define what the rest of the floor was going to look like. And then once that was done, it was done a little bit early. We papered it up, got ready on everything else. Now, the project really kind of rushed along, and Liz, you don't see too much, but she was busy working with things. In fact, she was up in the barn on a constant daily basis, just painting all the trim, painting all the molding, painting all the radiators, getting all that ready to go in, which was a huge help when it came time to put things in. Then here we go, the floor in the living room, and I got a lot of questions about this. It has Smile Face in it. It was just warped and sagging from age, almost 175 years old. So it had a big Smile Face in it, and people were wondering, well, how are you going to do it? People were looking at that saying, that's not going to work. Well, I ended up putting ribs down the whole length of it. And each one of those ribs was screwed in. It was screwed into 2 places. Tried to hit the joist when I can. I had to score the bottom of them so that they would fit all the cupping and the warping of the original boards. And then once they were scored, I took and I brought my chalk line and found a level spot, did my level, chalked it with the chalk line, and then once it was chalked, did a second cut over the top to make it level. So the first cut was so that it fit the floor, and the second cut was for it to be level. And none too soon, because the wood shipment had come in from W.R. Robinson Lumber, and they're up in Hardwick, Mass. And this was beautiful 3/4 by 12-inch northeastern white pine, just beautiful. Wasn't quite done with the floor yet in the living room, so I jumped back into that. Just a lot of time and patience, a lot of moving around the level. You can't trust your eye when doing a project like this, because everything is telling you that the floor is straight when in reality it's not. Here's a quick video of what the whole thing looks like, and you'll see what I mean, because the boards actually look like they're bowed up. But in reality, the top of the boards are all level and flat. It's the floor underneath that is not level. People had mentioned to me a number of times they didn't know what I was doing. They're like, how are you leveling the floor? But when it all came down to it, you have to trust the level, you have to trust the math, and you can't trust your eye at that point. Now I put these 12 inches on center just to give a little bit more support to this. And then the boards came in, and so we did our first long runs right there across the door, and we defined our run. Started putting them in. And once we started putting them in, then we could really see that the floor was level the whole way across. And a lot of work putting these in. I used subfloor adhesive on every rib just to give it that added support. We put in those cut nails. Those cut nails, they just added a beautiful look to it, and 350 to put them in. And if you've never done that before, have the right hammer. This was a 12-ounce MIG hammer, and when you're banging in 350 nails, it makes a huge difference. And of course, these nails came from Tremont Nail Company, and oldest nail company in the United States. Probably the original nails for the house was from this company. Then here's where you see it's really the floor. Now that it's on top of all of those ribs, is flat all the way across, and huge difference it made once we got the whole thing in, particularly rounding it into the closet and into that final corner. Here's just a quick video here of what that looks like. We put down the cardboard because we were going right from this step into staining, and we didn't want to really add any more footprints or traction or anything like that. And we got all the sanding done, so I just want to be able to give this over to Liz so that she could start her staining technique on it. And that allowed me to jump into the dining room. And then once in the dining room, I got the boards in, and then here we are coming up to the kitchen. Now the kitchen, I said we didn't reach the same level. We were only 3/4 of an inch off from the height of the floor in the whole house to the height of the kitchen. So I took that 3/4 of an inch, spread it out over 12 inches, one board, and then just created a very subtle ramp that brought it up from the dining room floor into the kitchen floor. I got a lot of comments about this. So this is the flail I made in order to distress the wood. It's basically a tent stake that I put a couple of Crosbys on with a hammerhead, D-ring, and then the chain. So it's soft wood, so it takes the denting nicks very easily. And what we wanted to do beforehand was we wanted to distress it. We wanted to age it so that any dinks and nicks that would happen over time wouldn't necessarily become an eyesore because the wood was already distressed. And then that was what this little tool was, and then that's what it looked like on the wood. Just so it really kind of adds to the whole weathered, aged look of the wood. Here Liz is finished with the floor, and this is before any sealing. This is just dried for 12 hours. This is in the living room. And she kept refining her treatment a little bit from when she had it in the kitchen to where she had it here. Oh, the hallway. So we had the similar issue with the hallway, where the hallway was not level. Actually, the hallway was really kind of off kiltered. It was shifted down at one point. So I had to pull up the floor, get down to the subfloor in there, and they ended up gluing everything down. So that was a bit of a chore. And then once it was there, it was the same process of putting the ribs in here that I did in the living room, where first you score them to the curve of the floor. Then once you put the curve in, you chalk line it, and then you cut a straight level top to it. Took 4 boards to level that out in there, and bring it up to the level of the dining room. Now, I had talked about from the very beginning how there were 5 different levels to the floor in this house, and when you walk through it, because it was so aged and warped, you kind of felt like you were seasick. And once the hallway was done, to be able to walk from the barn all the way into the living room it was monumental, another milestone. Here's Liz prepping for putting the stain treatment down in the dining room. Here's the stain treatment after it's dry, before it's been sealed. Then once we got all those done, we started to seal. We sealed with a 2x Varthane floor finish, and it was a satin. It wasn't a gloss. We didn't want that high gloss. We just wanted the depth, and we put on 2 coats for that. Here you see it ramped up into the kitchen, and then the difference in color because of the different types of wood between the kitchen and the dining room. There's the hallway. There's the staircase. We didn't end up staining underneath the staircase because we didn't feel we needed to. And then once all that was sealed and we were ready to go, we quickly moved on to all of the finish, trim and molding, putting on the heaters, putting up those big wide mop boards on the bottom, doing the picture frame molding around the windows. And that's all 1/4, or 3/4. It's 1x4 common stock, nothing fancy about it. And now I could focus on getting the staircase in. So measured it all out, taped it up, and got that first step in because it was so important. I couldn't be more than 3/8 of an inch off from the very top stair to the very bottom stair. That would have brought me out of code. So once I got that first step in and I knew everything was all right, then we started putting in the stairs. And there were no stringers on this. Every stair was unique, and so we had to build off of the last one. And here's our first corner coming into that 45, and this was just 2 common treads that you can get from the Home Depot, and I biscuited them, glued them together, and then cut that angle into them. Now, I had some help getting up to this section. In fact, John Dewart, he was up in the main escape. He came and he helped me, and he's a boat smith, and he knows all about the wobbles of wood, and so he really helped me get all of these unique treads and measurements and levels and everything correct on it. Just a quick video of those first 3 steps going into our first 45 winder. You can kind of see some of the framework underneath, and again, there's no stringers. Every board, every step is cut and based off of the last one. And you know, it was all about the catting, it was all about the measurements and remeasuring and then doing it every time. Here's a more finished one where we kind of got around the corner. John was only up for a couple of days, so this is as far as we got. So we just got to our first corner before we doubled back and headed up. Liz, again, she's testing out the stairs, making sure they were sturdy enough, and they certainly were. And then kind of left me with just kind of finishing off that little peninsula that was at the very end. And then figuring out those last cuts and doing the measurements and going back, and here's me putting 2 of the treads together until I finally got to that very top one. And that top one was unique because I had to reinforce and put the floor in where there wasn't any floor before. So I had to make sure that that was all structural and stable, and then that final step just fell right into place. Now once the step was in place, well, now I could address some of the things we left out, and that was that little header board that went around. So I wanted to wrap that into the sill board, and now that the stairs were done, well, now I could kind of focus on a lot more of the finish work. So in order to really finish off the stairs, what I had to do was add a bullnose to the outside. And this is always kind of an afterthought when you're building stairs, and I had a lot of off-cut pieces. And so I was able to take those off-cut pieces, cut off the bull noses, and then I biscuit joined them into the side, being sure to measure and get them all so that they lined up and they went into place very smoothly. And I don't like the lines, and everything was glued and everything was sanded so that it was just smooth. It looked like one solid piece when it was all said and done. Right down to the beautiful 45 corner that we had on the very edge of it. Now the bull noses had to continue from one side to the other, and that was a little bit of a work, and that just really takes a sharp chisel and a keen eye, and you just slowly chisel it down till it's all the same, and then you run some sandpaper on it till it smooths out. Very detailed, very patient process, and you can't rush it when you go through it. You got to make sure all of those lines and all the joinery and everything just lines up. Now, once that was done, I was able to encase that soffit and bring it all the way around so it looked like one solid piece. More plaster, more drywall, more sanding. And then while all that was going on, getting all that ready, well, we had to get ready to start staining the stairs. So we were planning on that so that Liz can come in and stain the stairs. And I just wanted to finish up some things because we had so many things going on at this point. We were running around, and there was the closet, and there was the wall in the kids' room, and getting that all finished off and drywall on it, and then the linen closet that was in the bathroom. Well, we had to close up that wall, had to get the linen closet made, and then Liz came in and she started getting the stairs all prepped out. And here's just a basic primer coat on all of the shiplap and the kickboards as you go up. And so she took great care to go in and to do all that primer coat without getting any on the actual treads themselves, because that was going to be the stain. And so we wanted to make sure it didn't get any paint on it so that it would take the stain quite readily. And now while she's doing that, usually I'm sleeping and I go home and she's working, and then I come back and I'm just continuing with the punch list. And then here we are. I thought we were through with it, but had to do more plaster work, had to do more seaming. And so Liz come back in when I was at work, and this is what we're doing back and forth at this point because we're rushing to get done. And she did all of that paint. So she did that whitewash on it, and it's not complete. And then my next step was to get those steps all sanded and ready for stain. And that's tricky because there's a lot of angles there. So I went in, and you got to take a little bit of patience and got all the sand and opened the grain for them so that she could start her treatment. And she's using the same weathered treatment, and it looks just a little bit different because it's a different wood. But it's still holding the same colors, still the old masters. And while she was doing the steps, then I moved right into making all the spindles, the balusters, and the newel posts. And I cut that all out of common stock. These are 5-4 boards. It's common stock. You can get them from any big box store. These are out of 2x4 borrowed boards. And stained them. I wanted them to be a darker stain, and I just used a straight Spanish oak. There's no pickling white on them. And then as I was working on that, Liz finished the stairs. We got them sealed, and as soon as they were all pretty, I had to start cutting them in to get all of the spindles and the newel posts in. So these are all cut and notched and put in so that they're very solid with the step and the kickboard, and when they're screwed together, there's no wiggle to it. So you can go from underneath and you can go from behind. So it's important to have all of those points. And there were some really unique angles, and all of these just kind of had to be cut in. It was custom and it was hand, and it's just patient work. And if you're a patient type of person, well, this is definitely a job for you. So here we are coming up on that 45, which had a number of different angles on it, and then we put a square newel post in, and then here's just a shot of me sealing those handrails and getting them all ready to go in. While all that's happening, the primer, the finish paint went on that sill. And then I started putting the railings in. And we got the first railings in, and a little bit of figuring on that first one just to make sure it was the look we wanted. It was the thick and the thin balusters and spindles. And then once we got around the corner, well, we had to deal with a little bit different angles because of the length of the rise. We had to stay that 34 to 36 inches above the nose of each step in order to be in code. So here we put it in finish, and then I made it so that that top rail just goes on afterwards once everything's done. And here we are around the corner, cutting and notching all of those wider spindles or balusters into each step. And again, giving it multiple points in which to connect so that it just adds a very strong rigidity to the railing. Get rid of that wobble. I like a nice sturdy railing, particularly on a stair like this. And then there you see it. You see it all before. We had to really custom cut some of the newel posts into place. And particularly the one that's against the soffit that we did. That's one solid piece, and it was just cut and notched so that it would all fit together and then have a strength to it that goes all the way through. And again, back to the CADing program, measuring out the distance between the spindles. Have to be under 4 inches round diameter. They say take a ball. If you can fit a 4-inch ball through it, touch them all up with white paint, and then once that was ready, put those finished handrails on the very top. And then I got to a point where we were done with that, and I could finally start bringing the boards up and putting in the barnwood floor on the very top. This was the first one. It had the bull nose for that very first step, a little bit of reinforcement so that if you're stepping on it, it went from 3/4 to a full inch, which is the distance of the tread. I noticed there was a problem going into the master bedroom where it was basically we had another angle down, so I had to create this sort of little flare there to take it down just about another 3/4 of an inch, because we didn't level any of the floors on the second floor. It is what it was at that point, and the roofs were so low we didn't want to bring them up anymore. So we figured that that was just something we were going to live with, and it's just going to be to the character of the house. Here we are back in the kids' room. We got all the floor in and notched around all the mold, all of the little soffits and entranceways, and moving back so that Liz can come in here. So sanding and that prep of the wood and doing sanding is so important to raising the grain. And I used 150 grit on the entire floor just to get it all so that it was a similar texture, it was a similar grade, and then the stain would go right onto it. Now back out to back out into the hall. We had that little pedestal, and it was a little bit off, so I had to put a filler in there just underneath it. And again, since the floor was off, you had to custom cut it all the whole way because it was a little bit of an angle. And then once all those boards were in, I had to make that cut so that it would be flush to that trim board, and that was a little bit nerve-wracking. Had to make sure my measurements were right on, so I started it with the saw, and I ended up with a round over our finish bit on my router in order to make that nice and flush. And then just a little 45 bevel to it, which is something that looks just nice and clean. And now we've got a perfect cap that goes all the way around that chair wall. Back into the bedroom. Liz finished the stain, and I went right into sealing it. Once we get it sealed, it's pretty bulletproof. Then that allows us to get all of the radiators in. Back to the new post, working on the new post on the very top one, and you had a very unique 45. And so I took a square new post, did a 67.5-degree angle, cut it, and then I glued them back together so that now you can get that 45, and instead of having to angle in the railing, well, the new post itself is angled, and I like that look. Liz, I like catching her because she definitely put a lot of work into this, and there she is in the closet in the hallway. She's doing all of the finish painting there while I'm putting the trim boards up. Getting all of that in and around, and of course we had to deal with that PEX pipe, which was the heater line that just ran around, so there was a little soffit that we had to build off the wall in order to hide that PEX pipe, and there you see it right there. So that's the PEX pipe that just kind of went the entire perimeter of the house. Back into the master bedroom. Haven't finished the floor yet in here. Had to take the heaters off the wall, had to raise everything up, and then get this prep to put the barn boards in. The last of the barn boards. And then, of course, we had the closet. We had the walk-through closet, original blue floor that was in there. So I got the longest boards we had, wanted to make that flow all the way through, and it was a little challenging now that we had railings in and everything to start getting these big pieces of wood up there. But careful, I got them all up there, and the whole time I've been putting these down, I've been using heavy-duty liquid nail, and this is really been sort of acting to then like take away that bounce that age has really kind of put on it. Hammered in my last nails, and then handed it over to Liz, and she started just blending in the floor, the weathered look from the floor in the hallway into the master bedroom. And here she tried a little bit different, a little lighter weathered look. And she's really been kind of taking that whole look from downstairs to what it looked like in the kids' room. and just a quick shot of the closet, and then you see all the finished trim, the curtain rail went in there. All these things are happening all at the same time. And then to Liz finishing off the floor, the radiator covers going in, but we had 3 different looks to the floor. We had a very light weathered look in the master bedroom. We had a medium weathered look, and that was in the hallway in the kids' room. And then we had that heavy weathered look on the first floor. Here's just a shot of them all together where you see the natural wood in the upper left-hand corner, and then the light in the medium, and then the heavy. So they're all the same colors, the same treatment. It's just different applications of it, or heaviness to the brush. Once we get everything sealed and then the radiators were on, well, I had to fit them there. And now they put them on against the molding, so I had to put a filler in that crack between the wall. They don't normally do that, and I take the extra step because everything falls back there. So you just cut a board that's the exact spacing and size of that. Oh, while I got in the middle of all that, the lights came in. The lights came in, Liz's pendants went up, and she designed those so that as you step down, each one kind of just wraps around that staircase. So that was a little bit of a break. The glass door for the upstairs bathroom shower came in. The molding went up and around in the foyer window. So all these things happening at the same time. The spindles went in. We're kind of leapfrogging here, but this is kind of the craziness of it all. And then we got past our 70 days, and it was just go time. So we got all of the shiplap in there and then wrapped around, so that sealed off the stairs from the basement. And then here's a shot of it as you're looking in the front door, and this is kind of what you see as you go in. Of course, it's not painted yet, but it's a beautiful piece as you kind of come in. The railings are all done, everything's all caulked and all grooved, so that Liz had a chance to go in there and finish her painting while I'm doing everything else. Now, in the meantime, so many things going on. We'd had a problem with the chimney. We tried to resolve it. It wasn't working. So we had some chimney guys come and take a look at it, and they got up on the roof and they sent me some pictures. And the whole top part of the chimney was coming up, and it was falling apart. So there was no cap on it, nothing like that, and that's where the water was getting in. It was seeping into the chimney. So they're out there working on that while we're inside and we're finishing all of the molding and trim. And so everything ends with a little bit of caulking, which is what I put on there just to kind of fill in the gaps between the walls, which was uneven, original wall, and then building the soffits to encompass the PEX tube. And so that had to go all the way around. And there's some unique cuts. These are original walls here. There's nothing too fancy about it, but we had to make sure that it all blended together. And here it was on the other wall, and then just capping it all off, and then adding some caulking to smooth out all of those crazy angles, and well, just make it look like it was a part of it. So the biggest thing here was just really scoring it so that that ramp up that we had as you went through the door just looked normal. And then again, of course, Liz's beautiful floor, which is just fantastic. Here's a fun shot. When it's all said and done, when you're cutting molding, you have so much scrap and waste. So that's what the wood shop looked like after everything was done. There's Liz. She's putting on the final coat of white paint on the clapboard. And then I'm finishing up all of the radiator soffits up there in the bedroom. And then this railing. This was the inside railing on the staircase, and this was really kind of crazy and unique. It was a code requirement that you had a railing on the inside curve, and since it was a serpentine, it means you had to have a railing on both sides. And this railing, it was a 45 into a 90 and back into another 90, and just a lot of crazy angles. I just really had to get perfect the first time. And then, yeah, everything just kind of came together. Liz started staging, Aiden started coming over. Of course, as soon as Aiden came over, he jumped on the PlayStation. We brought the dogs over, but we had to put everybody to work. So we got Aiden out there. He's cutting the lawn, making everything look nice. And then we had the dogs in there, of course, and so they were testing everything. Here's Natcha. Beautiful old girl. She's testing the stairs. She really liked it. Her little paws aren't leaving nearly as much as you would think nick marks on everything. And then, God bless her, she loved everything. She loved the little warm spots, and she fit right in. Here I am measuring the doorways for aircraft cable. That was something we're doing until the doors come in. And then I had 2 lengths. I went with a thinner length for it. Oh, and of course, roof needing to be repaired. So the roofing guys came in, and they were great, a local company, On Top Roofing, and they had to remove the entire roof, take up the slate, take off the original cedar shingles that were underneath, get it down to the original sheathing for it. And then once they were down there, they started building it all back up again. So they put plywood on it. And then once the plywood was on it, then that's when they started actually putting tar shingles. We went out. I was collecting as many slate tiles as I could to repurpose, and they were falling off the roof and creating little gravestones. So it was a hard hat area, but I did manage to grab 2 totes full of really outstanding shaped slate tiles that we'll be able to repurpose and use for other things. And of course, while all this is going on, as we're trying to wrap everything up, huge cleaning process going on. Aiden helped out with that. He was sorting out screws and nuts and bolts, and just being really great about that. And the roofing guys were great. They were finishing off, as this time I'm trying to wrap and get all my videos up. That's them. They're basically putting plywood over the original sheathing boards, and then just getting those what they call architectural shingles all the way up to the peaks. And there was a great ridge vent that kind of went over the whole thing. So that was it, and that brings us to really where we ended the project 75 days later, and you saw the wrap video. And then well, here's a great closing shot of all of us being unapologetic. Shout out to Unapologetically Me about who we are. And I really hope you guys liked it, and I'm glad you all came along for the ride. If you managed to sit through this hour-long video from start to finish, that's great. I appreciate the diehards out there, and then leave a like, leave a comment, and hopefully we'll have more projects like this coming down your way for you to view and learn a little bit from. And for the folks out there who are putting into the punch list, the links in the description on the YouTube channel, that's great. I'll be over at your house, and if you approve of it, well, we'll make your project into one of these vlogs, and then just show people how easy it is, or not easy, but how readily available it is to kind of just get things started, and where your resources are, and how to get your projects going. So thanks for checking in, thanks for watching this whole time, and well, we'll see you on the next one.